during the season, that's always fun because, you had guys that, maybe went to a rival team in your conference. So it was
Mm.
always like college football Saturdays were fun because, you'd wear your Nebraska shirt. Derek would always wear his Michigan shirt. And I was like, Derek, you didn't even go to Michigan. He goes, I registered for classes. And I'm like, that don't count.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Quinn Uncaged. I'm here with World Series champion Joba Chamberlain. How you doing, man?
Good. Just enjoying the cold weather here in Nebraska right now.
Yeah, you see, I'm in South Florida, so I
Oh,
forgot all
thanks.
about
Rub
that
rub
life.
it in. Rub it in, huh? Rub it in.
I I'm originally from New York, so I forget that
Okay.
happens there. But what's the weather like there right now?
I think I woke up to a balmy 33, but we're up to 53 right now. So it's a heat wave.
Yeah, if it gets down, I remember my first Christmas going back home. I remember getting off the plane and wanting. I thought that the quote unquote Florida blood was a myth, but I remember
No,
getting off the plane and I just didn't about face. And whenever the Russian fighters come and train here, they're always like, "This weather makes you weak." Like, yeah, it
no,
does.
it's true. I remember when I first moved down to after I signed with New York,
Mhm.
moved to Tampa and was getting my house ready and everything. And I was like, man, am I decorating a palm tree right now? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
And I got home and I was like, oh man, I want to go back. Like it's real. You don't realize it. And it doesn't take long. When I rehabbed my elbow too, I lived in Pensacola with Dr. Andrews, and I'd come back and like, man, there's something about that definitely is true.
yeah, and it's just especially down here, it's so heavy. The humidity, it's so heavy. Um, but yeah, man. Well, we connected because of we were both on X, and you have a rapidly growing social media presence, which I think is awesome. And I love how you engage with the fans. A lot of athletes, it's I really appreciate when they do that. So tell us what you got going on with your podcast or anything else you're doing on social media.
Man, you know what? It's weird when your son goes to college and you kind of got more time on your hands and and it's just I'm a fan of sports in general. Like I was fortunate enough to play it for a while, but I'm just a fan like everybody else. And so for me, it's fun to be able to, interact and get opinions. And on my show, obviously with Job in the Mouth, which you can find on all platforms, but not here to really do that. But it was something that I learned so much from the fans and their perspectives because I look at things in one way, right? As we all do, which is great. But also, I may not look at it from a different perspective. And I
Mhm.
love the fact to be able to go back and forth on like how or why they, come on. And obviously there's the analytical people that are going to stay in that realm, which is fine. I think there's a place for it in what the world of sports is now, but I also don't think it's the end all that meets all. And I love being able to go back and forth. Obviously I try to get as many people as I can. And I just want it to be organic because we're fans just as much as that. And people that think we aren't fans is crazy. And the people that say they're not fans or whatever is they're lying because
Yeah,
they are. They watch it and they do those things. And it's just not, baseball, it's football, it's basketball, it's golf, it's mixed martial. I mean, it's boxing, obviously huge boxing right now for Nebraska, obviously with what Bud has done lately.
yeah.
So it's fun to be a fan. And now with the platforms that have been created for us, it's awesome to be able to interact with the fans and not just on like, hey, I'm talking, you're listening kind of deal because I don't like that because it makes me I'm not any better than you guys. Like I'm not any smarter about baseball because I played. I mean, I my delivery was terrible, but it worked. Like it's one of those things where just because you did something doesn't necessarily mean you're smarter than anybody. And I definitely am not. So I love just being able to interact and, be a fan, and watch the game and be like, hey, what would you have done here? Or, how would you pitch this guy? Or what do you do? Like, I love that dynamic of it. And, social media is terrible in some ways, but it's great in a lot of other ways. And I try to make sure that it's always positive. Like, I love when people get into arguments, like, but they're good arguments. It's not like they can't say anything. And I hopefully kind of got in front of it. I was like, hey, we can argue and agree to disagree, but we're not going to attack one another. Like that's not what we're here for. Like I
Absolutely,
love when
amen.
people go back and forth and they're like, well, you missed this one and this, and then they call them out and then they go back and forth. And it's like, I love that to see, the dialogue between fans or, it could be two butting heads that don't agree on something, but I love that. And as long as they're not attacking people, it's awesome to see. And I love doing it. It's something that makes me look smarter when I go on shows because there's so many things that I use from people that are probably smarter than me and know how to use the computer better to look up certain things that that I'm like, hey, you should follow this person because they're great. And I think that's a really, really cool dynamic that social media has created for everybody and anybody right now.
Yeah. I love your outlook on that because I think people miss that. And I think that encourages people to interact more. And, we need to spread a lot of good around these days. But you made me think of something. So you said, like, you're not smarter. You like getting different perspectives. I know that I always try when I give my output whenever there's a UFC on or something like that. I try to mention, I don't just say his boxing sucks. I mention why he's having issues with his boxing right now, whether what the opponent's doing or what he's not, just to add a little bit more to it. Because I know, because people would say that about me. My striking was so much worse than my wrestling and my grappling when I was competing. What is something that you would say to fans that they would know, whether it's the training aspect or like maybe that they should know that they might not think of what you see when they give perspective?
I think the biggest thing is you only see the time that they can compete, right?
Yep.
That's all you get to see.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's the easiest time for any athlete. I don't care what sport it is the time you're actually competing.
Yes.
Because that window is this small compared to you getting ready when it's this big. And when the lights are off is when you're actually getting ready for the end product, right? And I try to say this to a lot of people. We're not in a movie. We don't get 7 takes to get it right.
Yeah.
And and at the end of the day, too, we're human beings. We're parents, we're sons, we're friends, we're brothers, we're sisters. So there's the human element too, where I think like some people forget that, hey, I pee the same way y'all do. It just might be a little different, but we do it the same way.
Yeah.
So I think there's that part of it. And trust me, I get the fact people spending their hard-earned money to go watch a product that they want to see, but also know we're not trying to go out there to fail. Like if and like if you're not going out there to give your best, like that's on you. And that hurts worse than anything else that anybody can say or do, then and like you could have put in some extra work or you could have done this to prepare yourself better. But yeah, it's one of those things where the perspective is they always say perception is reality, right? Well, your perception of what you see in the final product not necessarily isn't. Like they could be grinding through injuries, they could be battling, mental health, they could be battling family issues, they could be there's so many things that when you get to prepare for that game is kind of what pushes it away. And then you try to balance it. And it's like anything, life is life.
Yeah.
It can come at you anyway, hard, soft, easy, it does not matter. But I think just when you see it, especially in the realm of professional sports, no matter what it is, you see the final product, and sometimes we're not happy with it. But know that that's not what the case is as a general rule, because we are putting in the work in when nobody can see, and that's the time that some things are won and lost. And I know it's cliche to say, but it's very true.
No, it is very true. It makes me think. I always think of sports like this. This is why I'm such a sports nut like yourself, and I really like digging into what goes into the work because I feel like sports is like art. Like when you go to an art show, you see the final product, but you don't see the hours put into that product. The strategy that went to putting the colors. I mean, I'm not an artist, but
I can draw stick figures.
yeah, that's the best I got. My son's 5. He's got me beat. Trust me. But and I think at the same time, I think people need to remember that they're fans because we're not scripted. It would be very difficult to be emotionally invested into a 162 game season if you knew what was going to happen every night. And even in our career, like we fought like 3-4 times a year, and but if everyone knew it was going to happen, would you really? If it wasn't a roll of the dice, would you go? Would we compete? I think that's part of us too. Like we're kind of crazy wanting to compete, but yeah, I think that was a great take. Thanks for getting elaborate on it. So you said you're a sports fan. What are some other teams or sports that you like to watch? I know college football is pretty big out there.
Yeah, well, college football is what we got. College volleyball is very big. Our girls are really, really good. We set the record for most attended women's sporting event with like 95,000 at a volleyball game. We sold out our football stadium. Yeah, but I just every sport. I mean, our closest NFL team is Kansas City. So there's a lot of Kansas City fans around here. I grew up a Niners fan, which everybody always asks me why. Is because we didn't have an NFL team when I was a kid. And the Niners had like Tom Rathman, Roger Craig, all the guys from Nebraska. So that was
Yeah.
like kind of what I rooted for. And then as my career progressed, it was guys that I got to meet and watched and follow their career. Now we're all old and retired, so there's very few of those guys. Now you're watching them on commercials or hosting shows and stuff like that. So I love everything, and that's one of the cool things about being able to do what I did is to be able to meet all kinds of people in every walk of life in sports. Obviously, as a sports fan, being able to, meet guys that you watched on TV when you were younger, and obviously being able to play the game of baseball, meeting
Mhm.
some of your heroes that you watched as a kid, and do that. So that was really cool. But I don't think there's a sport that I don't like. I see a lot of people like I cricket is one that I've seen. Like I've gotten into lacrosse. I didn't know much about. Obviously, I knew much about it because of where it came from, but it wasn't really big in the Midwest until I got to the East Coast, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
this is really, really, really a big deal.
Mhm.
And now it's spreading like wildfire, and such a cool sport to learn about. And like I was talking to one of my really good buddies. He played basketball here in Nebraska, and he lives in Maryland now. And his son is playing. He's telling me some of the rules and like how he's like it's like hockey but soccer, but like now he's like 8 or 9 years old and he can hit and like this. And I was like, man, this is crazy.
That is great.
So yeah, it's fun just to like learn about other sports. Yeah, I don't think there's everybody's always like, some sports are boring to watch. Baseball is obviously one of them. Like, I love NASCAR because I didn't really know much about it until I actually went. And like, oh, you just turn left. Man, that's a fun sport to go to when you are there watching it.
Agreed. I've
And
been to one. It's a lot of fun.
dude, it's nuts. I mean,
Mhm.
the fans are great. The way that they embody and embrace the fans is crazy. Like people don't understand like how they like want the fans to be a part of the product, a part of the event, a part like literally I try to the only way I can describe it to fans that are baseball fans that maybe have never been to a NASCAR event is like you can literally be talking to them while they're sitting in their car about to take the lead lap. I'd be like, that's like me warming up in the bullpen and you standing right behind me asking a question before I go in the game. And it's the only sport that does that where they literally can be on the track while they're in the car, and then obviously they get them off. But they do a fantastic job of embodying the fans and making it a part of the
Oh yeah.
whole event as one. And so yeah, I mean, obviously I love MMA. It's something that I Chuck's a really good friend of mine, Liddell, Frankie, getting to know those guys, obviously being in New York and
Uh-huh.
seeing some of those guys. So yeah, it's always fun to go. But I found like I've been to ones up close and like they give you good tickets, but like my
Yeah, you
neck
don't
hurts
want to be
afterwards
there.
because I'm no, it's great. I never you have to go experience it like
Mhm.
just because. But then I'm like, man, they're good seats. Don't get me wrong, but like you got the camera guy trying to get everything. You got
Yeah.
people standing up. Like it's awesome to be right there. Like I could care less about being on the big screen or whatever. Like I want to sit and like I want to see the fight. Like I don't have to like tilt my head or look all the way up, and I end up looking at a screen anyways.
Yep. Yeah, my parents always ask for the not their cage side, the one row up.
Yeah, up so you can see over everything.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up Chuck Liddell. I've never met him personally, but his former training partner, Glover Teixeira, is a very good friend of mine. I actually used to live with him, and so is John Hackelman, his coach. I know John very well. They came down here when Glover was training for fights. We roomed together. It's funny you bring up. Well, we brought up Nebraska. I brought it up. I always, because everyone down here is University of Miami Hurricanes fans. So I always say the 95 Nebraska team would destroy the 2001 Miami Hurricanes team. And I obviously I embellish a little bit, but I always rattle some chains down here. It's a lot of fun.
Oh
College
yeah,
football down here.
keep rattling because we do it here too. I mean, that's like when we had to share the national title with Michigan. And we, you know what, we haven't been good at football in a long time, so like we have to like go back and like well, you haven't done anything. I was like, I know, but we were good at one time. Like, and we're
Yeah.
not. We laid an egg last week, but it's.
Mhm.
I mean, it's always. I love those conversations. That was during the season. That's always fun because you had guys that maybe went to a rival team in your conference. So it was always like college football Saturdays were fun because you'd wear your Nebraska shirt. Derek would always wear his Michigan shirt. And I was like, Derek, you didn't go to Michigan. He goes, I registered for classes, and I'm like, that don't count. So it's always fun to sit in the clubhouse and always give banter back and forth of your own and hopefully you're good because then you get to talk a little more crap. But if you're not, then it usually doesn't go well. And then you kind of just try to avoid it and stay in a corner so nobody
Yeah.
like brings it up. And then you're like, oh, I didn't know we were even playing you when you damn well know that you were playing them that week.
So I'm a big Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, and I went back to school later, and I was like, let me apply to a class at Notre Dame just to see if. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to save my money. I'm not getting in. But then I'm also a big New York Jets fan, so I'm very
Oh
used to being
gosh,
bad.
rough.
Yeah. Yeah, totally rough, but it is what it is. I'm not going to leave now for them to get good in 5 years if that happens. But my son is free to root for whoever he wants. You know, he can root for the Dolphins. We're down here, but I know exactly what you're talking about, hiding in the corner when your team's not good.
For sure.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll talk about you and your career a little bit. So you had the privilege of playing under both Joe Torre and Joe Girardi. What was the comparison or maybe the contrast between the two? What are some things that stick out that's different between the two of them?
Well, I mean, they're both players, and we're seeing it obviously now with players becoming managers a lot faster than they used to.
Yeah.
Obviously, the signing of today with Kurt Suzuki to the Angels.
Yeah.
He played with half of those guys. I think he had 2 stints with the Angels, and as recently as 2022. So you're seeing it more and more, and I think those two being ex-players in definitely like obviously different eras, and I think that's probably the biggest thing is Joe, Mr. T, as Derek called him, he was kind of the older school where, he dictated, but he let all the players kind of like, run, not necessarily, run's probably not the right word, but kind of control like what happens and how they do it. Like he said it here, but then they kind of, let the wheels run. And Girardi was more of a hands-on. I mean, he wasn't too far removed from playing with these guys as well in 2008 when he came in. And he was more of the analyst, super, super smart. If everybody that followed, when Joe's tenure, he had Joe's binder. He always had his binder. He graduated another college football trash talking because he went to Northwestern and Nebraska. So, we were kind of both not great at that time. So it was kind of a toss-up. They always played us well, and I think they actually got us most of the time. But just a very smart, more analytical than obviously Torre was. And I think that was kind of the changing in the guards for me. And after that, I only had players as managers. Then I had Osmus, who's catcher as well.
Yeah.
So I think the Joes, the difference is just the eras in the way that they managed. It's two great managers, but two totally contrasting styles on how they went about the way of getting the message across and the point across. And, I got that 1 year with Torre. But you could kind of just see that was his realm based upon the stories that you heard. And then obviously with Joe coming in and, being a part of the franchise as well, and then coming in as a manager and fairly young at that point and having the energy. I mean, he's working out with us, running and doing that stuff. So, it's different energy, both great energy, just in two different capacities that resonated well with everybody. Because you're going to click with somebody. I mean, we've all had coaches that, it's like, yeah, I get it. But other coaches where you're like, man, that really resonates. And for me personally, both of them resonated in such good ways because, one was like you had to not only always hold yourself accountable, but everybody else did. And this is like you're seeing, a new kind of new school manager where he's working out with you. So you're like, man, you got to go too. So it resonated me very, very well on both sides, both great managers. I mean, the only one thing that I can say about Torre is in his book, he said the only regret he ever had was not taking me off the field in the playoffs in 07, and which it was on me. It wasn't on him. So that gets brought up a lot, obviously, because of Bugs. But yeah, no, it sucks that was his only regret, but it was on me more so than anybody else.
I remember that game with the midges. Is that what they were?
Yeah. Yep.
I remember I was a sophomore in college, and there were only like 5 of us, and we got a 5-foot sub for that game. And it was like in the middle of the week. And then the game happened the way it happened, and like no one was hungry. I'm like, oh well, we got food for the next 3 weeks, guys. So don't go
believe it.
Yeah.
We've all been in college. We know what that's like.
Yeah. So we talked about Girardi's binder. We actually talked about analytics and stuff before, and I actually really love analytics. I'm actually very intrigued by it. I actually put some analytics inspired by baseball into when I was coaching and fighting, and just to see what it would come. And some cool stuff came out. I came up with like things people were doing in different rounds they weren't doing in other rounds. But overall, I feel like the biggest thing that analytics misses, and everyone knows, is like you said too, like I heard you, I was listening to some other podcast you were on, and you said along the lines of it's October, everybody's hurt or banged up. And we always said, like, if you went into a fight at 80%, you're lucky. And I feel like there's a lot of things with analytics they don't take into consideration as far as like how much the workload has been for this, especially for pitchers, the previous few days. What is your feeling on stuff like that?
I think, yeah, and that's where, like I said, it's not the end all that meets all. I think there's the analytical aspect of numbers, and numbers are numbers. You can't, there's no arguing what they are.
Yeah.
But what those numbers don't show is exactly what you said. Okay, I've thrown the last 4 out of 5 days. Is your stuff going to be as good? Probably not.
Yeah.
But that's just, I mean, the nature of the beast is time never loses. And the more you're out there, you only get so many bullets in your arm.
Yeah.
And you only have so many good swings. And you only have so many balls you can see with your eyes before they start going back. There's father time doesn't lose.
Yep.
And when it comes to that, and I think the show you're referring to is when I was talking about Bellinger when he hurt his knee or whatever and was limping, and they're like, "Oh, well, he's not doing this." I'm like, man, but you got to realize there is now no offseason in any sport. You may take a couple weeks to get, to heal some stuff up but there's really no offseason where, you're coming into camp like, oh, I'm just 50 pounds overweight, or you know what, I haven't thrown a baseball. I'm coming into spring training. This is what it was for. Those days are long gone. And so what the analytical part of it for me that it does miss, that's why you need to put these on the product, is because sometimes the way you're watching a game isn't what the numbers say. And we've seen it work in both ways. It's worked in the favor of the analytics, and it's also not worked in the favor because it doesn't, because you didn't have any feel of watching the game and seeing what's going on right in front of your eyes. You're looking at a piece of paper and be like, okay, well, this says what it is. Well, a lot of the stuff that goes on with us doesn't get reported. I mean, if it's glaring and you can see it, like, oh, you broke your finger, or you got whatever's going on. Yeah, the glaring ones they come out. But we've been grinding. It's 162 games, 180 days. Or you've been in a camp, or you've been, you're on a West Coast run where you haven't been home and slept in your own bed for 2 weeks. Like, there's so many other dynamics of what goes into it that analytics can't define. And I know there's people that have been trying. He's a neuroscientist here, and we had this same conversation. He goes, how can I predict? And he was talking about the draft per se, or like a big event. He goes, how can I analyze what your brain functions as at these things? And he's like, we can do heart rate, we can do all that stuff, but how does that mentally, like, how can I get that to quantitatively be analytical where I can use that? And it's just it's impossible to do because everybody reacts different. Everybody doesn't understand, like, okay, some people's heartbeat gets faster, some people get slower. And yeah, you can see this, but what does that mean? Does that mean they're scared, they're nervous, whatever? Well, my heart rate when I'm excited may be different than the person's when they're like, oh, it goes up, and now they're nervous, they're scared, whatever. So I love analytics because it does give you a pattern, and it does show you certain things, but there's also the heart aspect that you can't ever quantify. Like, would you ever have taken, and I'm gonna use baseball as an example, would you ever have drafted David Eckstein, and now he's a World Series champ, a World Series MVP? He had to crow hop from shortstop to get to first base. But
wow.
His exit velo was terrible, his arm strength was terrible, but you watched him play, and he left it between the lines every day, and you want that guy on your team. But then you got a guy, his exit velo is great, but can't get out of AA, but all of his numbers look sexy. So where do you quantify those two? Like, give me the dude that wins.
Yeah.
This dude looks the part, and he's sexy, and like, we call him 5 o'clock all-stars because he looks the part, boom, exit velo, homers, sounds loud, but gets in the game, and he can't do anything for you. So that's where the analytics for me fail, because you can't quantify that heart and to compete. Whether you have a 14 pitch at bat and you get out, but that's competing, and guys go in and just give up an at bat. Like, there's things you just can't quantify. That and it's just in every sport there is analytics for every sport, but there's certain things you just can't do.
Absolutely. So 5 o'clock all-stars, we call them Facebook fighters. Great for pictures, but kind of ends everywhere else. No, that was a great way to look at it. I know, actually, I just read a book called I forget the name of the Managers. It's on baseball managers by Scott Brooks or something like that. But he talked about the Game 7 of the 2003 ALCS, and it's almost how analytics giveth and taketh. And apparently Brady Little knew exactly that the game was going to go the way it did. Why was that? Bullpen arms were shot. I forgot Alan Embry. He said he called that morning. He's like, I can't even brush my teeth. Like, it's like, and I guess Pedro Martinez through 95 pitches was the best player in baseball. But then once 96 through 110 happened, he dropped more significantly than every other player in baseball. But they had to stick with him. And then there was that one inning, and then, well, we all know what happened. But it was very fascinating, especially me being so emotionally invested into that game 22 years ago. It was really, really a great read. All right, so let's get into you a little bit as you, the athlete. So remind us again, what was your pitches? What was your repertoire? Like, what did you use? It was your 4-seam fastball was your first, right? Then what else we got?
Yeah, fastball, slider, curveball. I mean, I had a changeup, but I think I probably threw it maybe 10 times in my career. It was not good. I think one time I threw it to Chris Davis in Texas, and it probably is still going. It was not good.
You bring up the changeup. I remember last year in the playoffs, Tommy Canley, and I just noticed this now. Maybe it happens more than I noticed it, but he threw like 45 changeups in a row. And
he set the record with I think it was 60 something in a row.
Okay, so is this more common than that's happening? The only time I remember something like that happening is with like a knuckleball, like just constantly throwing. Are pitchers doing that now? And like, granted, it was working. You know, a couple times it didn't, but it was working. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. Like and this goes back to obviously numbers, because to throw a pitch that many times in a row, you obviously have to have some type of knowledge of what that pitch is doing or what hitters versus it is doing, because there's no way you're like throwing it that many times. You're just not. And so it was crazy. And I had Tommy when he was coming up in the minor leagues and stuff, and he's a different cat. But yeah, it's just that you don't see it to that extreme. I think that's probably the extreme of extremes of throwing one specific pitch. Now you got dudes that throw like 8 pitches. So
yeah,
you know, that usage rate is completely different now. I think there's very few guys that nowadays that are, you know, Mo cutter heavy. Late in his career started throwing sinker. I can think of another guy that was very slider heavy that I played with was Al Albuquerque from the Tigers. He threw like 70% sliders. So they're few and far between of guys that generally just they rely on there's 2 pitch pitchers. There's guys like that, but where it's just, you know, over 60% one pitch, I don't think there's that many of them anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I was interested in that. So back to you now. Well, you and me now, I guess. Like, I have been finding it very relative how pitchers use their pitches similar to how fighters use their striking, boxing, kickboxing, whatever. Now, I had a really good left hook. We called it the Sunday punch, bread and butter. I would use other punches. Like, my right hand wasn't good till later in my career. Similar to like arm slots. It wasn't until I started throwing from different angles where I really found success with it. But I would more or less use that to set up my left hook. And then, of course, I had my jab to parry things, but that's besides the point. Basically, what I'm getting at is like, do you develop a pitch sequence? Maybe it's just for you. Maybe it's per, or you pitchers in general, per batter, maybe to set up your bread and butter pitch, or is it just, all right, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go here. Or I'm just going to listen to my catcher. How does it work, or how did it work for you, or to develop your pitching sequence?
I think they kind of go hand in hand. Where, you know, it's you're trying to play chess and not checkers. Think about this too. They know you're trying to set up your left hook, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I got to lead with my jab. They know my right's not great, but I'm setting this up, right? Mm-hmm. So it's okay. Maybe in the second round, let me do something. Let me head fake and then get to it. And then so switch it to the baseball side. It's like, okay, I faced in the first time. You know, I went fastball in, then slider away. Okay, now let's start him with the slider, then go fastball in, then try to get him out of the way. So you're doing, they know what the end goal is. They know what your bread and butter is. And mine was a slider to finish you off. Mm-hmm. But it was like, how do I get to that? And now, you know, sometimes it's like, boom, I get to it quicker and then I get an out earlier. Or, hey, boom, now the head fake here, there, now he's expecting it. And now he leaves me open and I can catch a jab. Or so it's basically trying to play that chess match where they know what I'm going to do, but how can I get them off of that? But then still at the end of the day, they know I'm going to throw it, but they have to respect the other side of it. So I think they go hand in hand. I guess I've never thought about that. And we kind of talked about it a little bit before we started filming. And I was thinking about it because not often do I ever get questions where I'm like, I guess I've never really been presented that question. So kudos to you for having the wherewithal to like put those together where it really does make sense because you're coming into a fight, and they're all fights in sports. No matter, I don't care if you're playing chess or checkers, it's a fight. You want to be the last one standing, right? And so it's they know how you're going to finish. They know what you're trying to do, but it's like how do you throw them off to get to what your strength is to know that they can't beat that. And maybe I catch you off guard to something else, or boom, I sneak one in with that's not even my bread and butter, and I catch you, and then boom, I can finish you off. So that was a sweet question.
Well, kudos to you. I'm very impressed with your fight knowledge. Those are some pretty good analogies used in there. I appreciate that. MMA is so new. It's only 32 years old. But I think in the last few years, it's been more than just a fight. We really started game planning, and that going in. So I think that's where that's coming from now. Game planning and strength conditioning have really come into MMA the last 8 years or so. Game planning a little bit later.
Do you think? Let me ask you a question, because
Yeah.
I say this a lot too now with analytics. Now with there's an iPad every 10 feet, it feels like. Do you think there is paralysis by analysis when it
Yes.
comes to certain things, where
Mhm.
now it's like, because I always thought about this too, like they would give me charts of hot cold zones, 0-0,
Mhm.
1-1, like, but that may not be my strength. And so if I started focusing on what like his weaknesses was, then sometimes I would fall into my strength, which is great, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes I'm like, oh, he doesn't hit this 0-0, but I can't throw that pitch, but I should based upon his numbers. And I'm like, well, that's my weakness. I don't want to get beat on my third pitch or my fourth pitch. So I think there's sometimes that it can be too much, where now you start overthinking. And I always got in trouble when I started overthinking, because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, just no, just trust your stuff. Like when I had to hit the few times that I did in the big leagues,
Mhm.
I'm like, why do I give the hitters credit? Like I'm in there and I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're gonna throw. Like, and I'm over here second guessing myself when I'm on the other side on the mound. I'm like, oh, he knows what's coming. When you don't. And so I think it does now, especially with how much information is available, that you can. And is it the same way for you guys?
Absolutely, it is. And we say it all the time, paralysis by analysis. And this is a little bit different, but it's relative. Like my wrestling and grappling was up here, and my striking was always down here. My goal was to get my striking up here, right? But while I was training my striking, I was ignoring my wrestling, my grappling, and I kind of got here. So everything suffered. And it got to the point where I actually even had a fight where I was just even my teammates were like, "Yo, to be honest with you, you're vanilla. Like you're not really, your wrestling isn't elite anymore. Your striking's never going to be elite. Something you got to come with. So you got to focus on what your identity is as a fighter, as an athlete, and just remember this is to supplement that. Like I was never going to be a world class striker, so I would need to just get down enough to see what would open up for takedowns, or if I can come back up, my takedowns to open up power punches, and just stick with my identity. Now, how did I do that? And I just had to go in and train and make the mistakes. Like, because if I was just thinking, like you said, paralysis by analysis, I was just stiff. And then I was catching some in order to try to land the perfect punch. I had to go in there. Like I always tell my fighters when I was coaching, please color outside the lines. I want to see, I want you to see what works, what doesn't work. And then we could sharpen it out. We can iron it out from there. So absolutely, paralysis by analysis happens. And I think just volume of repetition and just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations kind of helps athletes get through that, or it did for me and my fighters anyway.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because,
Mhm.
like you said, I think the analogy is like when you try to make, it's always like, do you want to be good at everything or do you want to be great at one thing? And again, and there's certain aspects where yeah, that all sounds great in theory, but it's like what you said. It's like yeah, I know what got me here, but let me try and make this better. And then, like you said, sometimes the other lacks, and instead of like this still being here, and instead of me trying to get this to here, like to here is okay,
Yeah.
like, but as long as this stays here,
Mm-hmm.
that was like I tried to throw a cutter, like learning from Mo, the best to ever do it, right? Then my slider turned into horse shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, scratch that. Like I'm going to try it, but and that's kind of where that comes in, and I think you when you focus on the other stuff, you forget. And I tell young kids and like that were coming up in the big leagues, I go, don't forget what got you here. Just because you got to the big leagues doesn't necessarily mean you have to reinvent the wheel, dog. You got here. Like remember what got you here. Is there time and a place to work on stuff? Yes, that's before the game. That's in the offseason. But now you're in the big leagues. What we all search in practice and blood, sweat, and tears to get here. Don't forget what got you here. You can learn stuff on the fly and whatever. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But during the game, remember what got you here. I remember my first batter in the big leagues. My fastball got me there and my slider got me there. I shook off Jorge twice, my first ever hitter in the big leagues, because I'm like, I'm throwing my slider. This is what I feel confident in. And it worked out. I struck him out. So
Mm.
It didn't always work out that way, but you have to remember what got you there and then not. You can always work on what you need to work on, but don't ever let the other side falter because you're trying to focus on something that didn't get you there. You're just trying to make yourself better as a whole.
Absolutely. The podcast I run for MMA is with UFC analyst Dean Thomas, and he was one of my coaches too, and he would always say,
DT's fun to listen to.
"Oh yeah, Dean's tune in sometime, and if you want to come on there talk MMA, we'd love to have you."
Yeah, I love it.
He always said, "Don't change your swing now that you're in the majors," and we would say it's like, yeah, like it's absolutely true. And MMA is cool where the fact that a lot of these regional promotions, the quote unquote minor leagues, we could watch that on the UFC Fight Pass and everything, and then when we see these fighters get to the UFC. Like they call it the UFC jitters. I don't really believe in that. I believe that they're getting there and they're just trying too much to do something that they're not because this guy has the UFC next to his resume, and because they're going away from what they're good at. And then you'll see that's why I think a lot of wrestlers succeed at a higher level. Not necessarily wrestling's so unique, but because they know to do their thing. Plus, if you're like me, you're just not good at the other stuff, so you got to stick to the wrestling. But that's why I believe they succeed. But yeah, no, that was awesome. I'm so happy we had that conversation. Last thing before I let you go. World Series starts on Friday. Who do you got? What are you looking forward to seeing? Obviously, Shohei's just ripping it up and once in a lifetime. But what else are we looking at?
Man, there's a lot. I was talking to my son about this, and he's usually pretty good at predicting. He had Dodgers in 5, which is right now it's the best bet. I think it was like plus 210 on FanDuel this morning when I was watching on MLB Network. But yeah, it's going to be a tale of a little bit of two starting pitching wise. You're going to have Max, who's set the record for the most teams pitched in the playoffs. A guy that's done it, you got to kind of lean on him and what he's done. Obviously, you have Bassett, who super cool story if you haven't read it. Like he's like, I'll do anything you guys want. He's like, and he said this 3 years ago, and it just kind of came out. And obviously, you saw what he did in the 8th inning, to get that 1 inning. And he's like, I'll fold towels. I'll be the towel guy. And so they've got guys that buy in with that team. I think it's gonna be a better series than I think. I think the Dodgers are stupid good. I mean, it's hard not to not to pick the Dodgers. I don't think it's gonna be as easy as people think it's gonna be. I think it's really gonna come down to pitching. I mean, Varland, I think, has pitched in every game in the playoffs for the Blue Jays. I mean, he gave up the homer to Judge and then comes back and starts the next game. Has pitched some big innings for the Blue Jays. Obviously, Hoffman, it was weird the game before he went 2 innings when the game was, I mean, it was close and you never know what's going to happen in the postseason. I was kind of interested to see what happened the next day. Obviously, he did his job. George Springer might go down as one of the greatest playoff clutch hitters in the game. He's tied third all time for homers. But then you just have, and then Vlad hitting like 9 bazillion in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think he hit 526 in the DS and little over 400. He's got 6 homers, the most ever in franchise history for the Blue Jays. So I think it's going to be interesting, and we'll see what happens with Bichette. They were talking a little bit. Do they find a place for him? You got media day to day, so they've got some time to figure that out. And then the Dodgers are the Dodgers. It's they have guys that step up, and when one guy's not doing it, you got 4 other superstars that can step up and pick them up. And that's kind of the thing. Ohtani, obviously, that game. I think it's right now, as in my opinion, as history unfolds, I think it's probably the second best, other than Don Larson's perfect game in the World Series. That for me, I guess I'm kind of biased to as a pitcher.
Yeah.
But also what he did, if you want to give it 1A, 1B, that's fine because there's never been a pitcher or hitter that's ever had the chance, I guess, in a World Series to do
Right.
that. He'll be the first one to have that chance to do it. Special individual, obviously. And then, Mookie and Freddie and Kiki, Will Smith. I mean, the list goes on. Teoscar. So I think it's going to come down to pitching. They're going to score. They're going to score. The Blue Jays don't have as much thump as the Dodgers, but I love watching Clement just go in and give great at bats. And, there's those guys that are going to be huge in the game of just, driving guys in, getting pitch counts up. And I think it's going to be a battle. Dude, if you're going based upon paper and numbers, you're obviously picking the Dodgers. But I'm going to wait a little bit to give my exact pick. Like I said, my son picked the Dodgers in 5. I'm going to do a little bit more digging, a little bit deeper than what the surface says, and look at some records, look at some splits, and see if there's any advantage. The Rogers Center's tough to play in. Those Canadian fans can get rowdy, that's for
You see
sure.
that? Yeah.
Oh, it's nuts. I've had plenty of stuff thrown at me. That's where I made my debut, was in Toronto, actually.
Huh.
So, but yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the World Series is great. It's such a great time of year for sports in general, with
Absolutely. My
basketball
favorite.
starting up, and football and baseball. So it's always a fun time to be a sports fan.
Absolutely. One thing that and correct me if I'm wrong, but one thing I noticed about Toronto that's so unique and so difficult is not only do they labor at bats, but they make contact so well. It's like, damn, it's like, how do you get these guys out? And like you said, these pitchers, it's been a long 3 weeks. So it's,
Man, I've never in my life, and I went to the postseason every year but one of my career.
Mhm.
I've never in my life had an out of body experience. Like when people talk about it, I'm like, no, that's not true. Like that
Mhm.
can't happen. It's true. It happened. It was when we won the World Series. I'm legitimately, and I can literally see it vividly right now. I'm playing catch, and literally I'm talking to myself. Like time stopped. I'm talking to myself, and I literally he's like, this is it. Like you are done after this. Like we've been going. That was the year of the World Baseball Classic, so we got to spring training earlier,
uh,
and we're in November. So it was January to November where we're full bore. We're not like
yeah.
getting ready. Like we're full bore. And so we're literally 10 months in and going. And I think that year I made 29 or 30 starts and then moved to the bullpen and blah, blah. It was just a year. And I'm playing catch now. I had it and I'm like, I'm done. And there's like, you're either going to break down or whatever happens, happens.
Mhm.
And I ended up obviously getting out of the inning and we ended up winning. But yeah, this going into it I don't care. Everything hurts, but you don't care. You're running out there with everything you got, and it's just such a fun time because everybody's gone through the same thing,
Yeah.
and it's last man standing truly after 10 months.
Hmm. Well, I'm looking forward to it. Joba, thank you so much again for coming on. Tell us your podcast again, where we can find you.
Yeah, Job on the Mouth it's on YouTube,
Mhm.
X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, and then my own is Java_44.
Yeah.
So hop on. I'm usually on 3 or 4 times a day, BSing with you guys,
Mhm.
asking. I love talking about food too. I don't know why it goes so well, but yeah, lady in Tampa, Sue. Hi, Sue, if you're listening. I'll tweet this later so you can watch this part. But yeah, she makes food and sends me pictures of every game day food. I love it. I mean, it's great. We got in a
Awesome.
big argument about Doritos one day. Like that's awesome. Love
Yeah.
doing it.
That's what it's all about. All right. Well, thank you very much.
You got it, man.
Yeah.